Hello everyone. Welcome to Excel Still More, the podcast of Household of Faith Fellowship of Churches. My name is Greg Harris and I am your host today. And we're going to be interviewing John Pontier and getting a glimpse of what the church life, the body life is like outside of the regular Sunday services, and how the culture of the church supports the goals of discipling the members of the church and preparing everyone to be an active participant in the kingdom of God from wherever they are in the family, in the community. So John, let's take a step outside of the Sunday service and look at what does Household of Faith in Hillsborough do during the week and outside of the services to achieve the commission we've received from the Lord and as pastors and overseers in the church.
Okay, fair enough. So just as the background goal is what kind of things can we do to support the householder in their responsibilities to their own families, as well as what they're called to do by the Lord beyond their families.
Right.
So that's kind of what drives the choices. We like to say, and I think we're pretty true, we're a non-programmatic church, right, where we don't have the leadership team so much set up. Okay, here's a program, to address this issue and this issue.
Right.
It's more like household initiative driven.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's probably a separate area of discussion. But we do have certain things that we put in place,
right, to make that happen,
to help facilitate those things.
Right.
So one of those areas of maybe training or development, theologically speaking, is we have what we call Leadership Institute,
okay,
which meets every Thursday evening. For many years, we met here in my home, and it's open to any householder or even a young man who doesn't have a household.
Right, yet. So fathers can bring
fathers and sons. Yes, fathers and sons. We try to, maybe 13 up kind of thing.
Right.
But obviously, if a guy needed to bring his 6-year-old, we'd figure out how to handle it.
Right.
But it's not a standard thing.
Yeah.
And at that meeting, we have a kind of a regular, because it's like 7 to 9.
Okay.
And recently, we met in public places like right. Wendy's or Panera or somewhere, with the kind of in the back of my mind kind of thing as well. We're going to be talking about Jesus,
yeah,
and the Bible,
right.
And we're going to do it out loud, and maybe we can either draw
yeah.
people into the conversation,
right.
or at least they'll be maybe curious.
And there's a biblical basis for that when you see in the New Testament where the early church would commandeer public places for ministry activities, such as the apostles teaching in the temple courts.
Mm-hmm.
You see the Apostle Paul making use of the school of Tyrannus, which probably was a lecture hall of some sort, and he did that for over 2 years daily in Ephesus. So there's a place for gathering in what would be public places like a coffee shop or even in a park or something like that, and hoping that people would be attracted to see what's going on over here and would have an opportunity to hear the gospel as well as to meet authentic believers in Christ and give them a chance to establish a relationship. So I think that's great that you're doing that. So you gather guys together. You're in a public place right now. Now with COVID, that's been kind of interfered with.
It has, and so for the moment, we're meeting back in my house.
Okay.
But that's really being limited only by the fact that the restaurants, at least in our area,
mm-hmm.
can't have indoor dining.
Right. So okay. So what are your goals in that meeting? How do you handle the time?
Well, it's kind of a multifaceted thing. It's we have an opening time for prayer and prayer requests, praise reports,
mm-hmm.
kind of thing, which allows us to get to know one another
mm-hmm.
On a level of personal need or something's going on in your life,
right.
you raise it. And then we have we actually, the church funds the meal for the men.
Okay.
Is the way of investing, I
Right,
guess you'd say,
right.
in a time of eating and study. And we give feedback to the man who just taught on Sunday, so whose ever turn had just been done
Okay.
on the previous Sunday.
Now, when you say feedback, what do you mean?
Well,
Is it just all compliments, or?
well, we're trying to do, two positives and one negative.
Okay, like
you
a
know?
sandwich.
Let's kind of, positive, and hey, you could maybe improve in here. The idea is for those who were in attendance, who were in the congregation, to provide feedback. So we ask him first. So how do you think you did?
Right.
How did it go from what you thought you were going to do?
Right.
And we try to be honest and say, well, I totally left out this point, but I guess I wasn't supposed to talk about it, because, or maybe I was, and I need to do better next time.
Right.
I'm typically the guy on the clock, so I'll tell you, you ran over again, because we try to keep the service to within a certain window, partially because we have small kids, and you just keep. Maybe you and I would just hey, let's just talk and dig into the Bible for an hour and a half here or something. The kids, you can't do that to the kids.
Right.
So we try to shoot for a 45-minute window for the message to be delivered in.
Okay.
So they get feedback on, you took too long, or hey, you did that in 35 minutes and it was a great sermon, or whatever. And as well as like two positives, how a point was delivered or focused, and then you could improve maybe here. Feedback. And then after the feedback portion, which I personally appreciate, by the way, hearing,
Yeah, everybody submits themselves to that process.
Right.
It's not just for the other guys.
No, anybody who enters the pulpit will be provided feedback.
Good.
Because we want to do better. We want to rightly handle the Word of God, and we want people to understand what we're talking about. So
when I've described this in my interaction with other pastors and other church communities, they've always said, "Wow, that would be so valuable to get honest feedback from men that I respect, that I love and respect, to tell me what I'm doing right, what I could do better, and to know that they're praying for me. They're not just taking pot shots at me, but that they really do want to see me succeed." And so that's what that Men's Leadership Institute's all about. So what happens next?
Well, after that, we then have we try to study through something to improve our theological muscles, so to speak.
Right.
And so we have a book, and we work through the book. So you're supposed to, I'll send out an email as a reminder. Oh, by the way, you're supposed to be through chapter 3 in the book by Thursday night.
Right.
Just a gentle poke, which is always good for me too, because I have to be ahead of everybody, or at least even, right? And then we start through the chapter. Sometimes we don't make it through, the whole chapter. So it's okay. Well, we'll pick up here next week, okay, and we'll finish. And then we work through. We've worked through, a lot of very interesting books. At least I enjoyed them. Yeah. Right now, we're going to be working through the Summit Ministry series on worldview. So we did understanding the times, understanding the times, and now the new version. If you're used to it was like a book like this thick, right? That Noble published. Yeah. Now they've broken it into 3 pieces. Okay. Understanding the times, understanding the faith, and understanding the culture. So we're moving now to. We already did understanding the times in the previous series, and now we're going to understanding the faith.
Now, did you guys work through? At one point, we were using Wayne Grudem's systematic theology as a kind of a foundational text for the men. We used the phrase that you are the resident theologian of your own household.
Yes.
And we want you to have an informed opinion about everything. You don't have to have it immediately. Yeah. If your wife or your kids ask you a question of a doctrinal nature, it's perfectly fine to say, "I'll get back to you on that."
Yes. Yes.
and then to go and use the resources that are available to have an informed opinion about what that particular doctrine is all about and how it applies in our own lives. So,
yeah. We worked through Groom's systematic theology. It took us 2 years
mm-hmm.
in the past, 15,
Good.
you know.
Good.
And now we more attack it on a topical basis, so
Mm-hmm.
or an issue basis. So recently we're in Thessalonians, so
Mm-hmm.
I thought, we should probably at least discuss the
lot of
four
eschatology.
views of eschatology, you know.
Right.
And so I sent everybody a link each week to. The wonderful thing is,
Right.
Grudem has up online his entire systematic theology he taught at his church in Arizona. So every chapter is broken out, and so I would say, okay, guys, number 52 this week. Then I give them a link, and they could go listen to it,
Right.
and then we could discuss it when we got together.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love Dr. Grudem's perspective, his humility as well as his zeal for the truth. So
yeah, I appreciate him.
Okay, so the guys are going through a book. Now what happens next? I'm assuming there's something to get ready for the coming service.
Right, and so the last portion of the meeting
mm-hmm.
is the guy who's teaching 2 weeks out.
Okay.
He basically gives us a brief. This is where I'm going. Well,
mm-hmm.
We read through the text, whatever
mm-hmm.
the text is, and then he tells us, well, this is how I'm approaching it
mm-hmm.
at this point, and then we basically discuss the ideas around that text.
Right.
I personally tried to get prepared with, reading through several commentaries or whatever
right.
to try to.
So you're loaded and ready to contribute if they need something.
Yeah, I try to. Sometimes I don't have to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's touching on the topics fine, just in
right.
the discussion. So I don't have anything to add to that.
But there is an element of oversight in that these guys are not just winging it. They've got men who are vetted and qualified for this ministry to give them feedback. If somebody's going off into the weeds somewhere, you can
hopefully
point that
avoid
out.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So,
and then, both of us, myself and Dave, the two elders, one of us will, if it's like, well, really, because it's, sometimes you're in a text and the point they want to talk about, it's not a bad point.
No.
But it's not really the point of the text.
It's not in that passage.
And so you got to kind of, let's focus. What is the text?
The fact that we're encouraging the men of the church to fill the pulpit in a routine way does not mean that our services are amateur hour, where somebody who really doesn't know what they're doing is given this responsibility and everybody just has to endure it. We're actually training these men, and sometimes in ways that they didn't get in seminary training and Bible college training, and they not only get the coaching before they step into the pulpit, they get the feedback after they have preached. And what would happen if any of these guys said something during the service, during their sermon, that was just way off track and even doctrinally hazardous to your health? What would you do?
Well, that would be an opportunity for myself or Dave, and we have done this. Thankfully, not too frequently, but we have done this, where at the end of the message, we will. Remember, I told you when we close, one of the elders will close out this. Well, that is a time for closing in prayer, and it's also a time for perhaps straightening something out. I've had, in fact, I think within the last 2 months, I've had to say, well, I know what he meant, but listen to me, especially you kids. This is it was
right.
We had to clarify,
right?
Because sometimes
you don't want to be offensive. You don't want to discourage the guy, but you don't want anybody to leave the building with a wrong idea about what the church actually believes and teaches.
Right.
And sometimes that's a little hard to do, especially if the individual involved is obstinate in some way. But it's only happened a few times in my experience where we've had to actually correct somebody when they're preaching, or correct somebody at the open mic.
Yeah, that's another place where correction can happen.
Right. So, all right. So you have your men's ministry training like that. That's been very helpful.
Yes.
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to come back and have some additional podcast sessions where you can unpack some of the other things that the church does to strengthen the ministry beyond just the Sunday services. So
I think that's a good idea.
all right. Well, thank you all for being with us. Look forward to continuing this conversation with John Pontier. My name is Greg Harris. This is Excel Still More, and I hope that we will be able to catch up with you later. God bless you and good night.
God bless.